And we're back on House Blend on SCVTV with our special guest, renowned photographer Henry Diltz. Henry, we were talking about your Woodstock gig, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the performers and shooting people like Jimi Hendrix and Crosby, Stills and Nash. And who were your favorite acts?
God, they all were so great. I mean, it was the greatest festival in the world. 40, 50. I don't know how many there were, but continuous for 3 or 4 days. I mean, Arlo Guthrie was great. Crosby, Stills, Nash were amazing. It was their second. They performed the night before. That was their first concert together.
And they always
CSNY.
They always thought that their performance was not so good.
Yeah, well, they were kind of scared, But it worked out well. The Who were great. The Jefferson Airplane were great. A lot of these acts would go on real late at night, and they'd still be playing as dawn came up, and that was the case with the Jefferson Airplane.
Good morning, people.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. That soft early morning light, and this great music playing. Same thing with Jimi Hendrix. He was supposed to go on Sunday night to end the show, but Sunday night became Monday morning, and he finally walked out on stage just as the first dawn light was coming up. And they walked out, and of course, we'd all been up for 3 days, and grabbing a little nap now and then, but suddenly these guys kind of walked out with these colorful bandanas, and wow, it was psychedelic, and they started playing this music. It was amazing. And then, when Jimmy played the Star-Spangled Banner, wow, it was amazing, because you never heard it played that way before, with all those sound effects, of the machine guns and the dive bombers and all the stuff.
Bombs going off.
And that music went out into the hills and echoed back and made the greatest sound. And you could hear a pin drop, just that lone guitar. And you could, and then you had the feeling, wow, I mean, that's our theme song too. We're all hippies, but this is our country too, and that's our song. And there's Jimi Hendrix playing. Yeah,
we're still American.
It was a patriotic moment.
Fantastic. Well, and then last year, or on the advent of the 40th anniversary, there was a big book project put together on it. And
Genesis, a big publishing company in England, who does these great, big, huge box sets, and they're limited edition. Limited edition, signed and numbered. And so this is one that has a whole lot of my pictures from Woodstock in it. One thing that's kind of interesting, here was a before shot. This was a chair, here's the hillside where all the people were. There's the stage down there. And of course, these were all people up here as well. So that's before, about a week before the festival. And then here it is after the festival. Kind of the same chair. And there's the hillside is all mud now, and these are all soggy sleeping bags and blankets, and there was quite a kind of an odor, a stench, that you can't get from pictures or the movie.
Yes, no smell-o-vision in the film.
Yeah, I mean, it was all this soggy, stuff laying out there in the mud for 3 or 4 days, and you had to be there for that.
Well, the film really got the music across really well, but the smell-o-vision, that didn't.
That's right.
We could only imagine what it's, what that was like.
Yeah.
Now, back on the left coast, back here in California, you met the Doors. You did some work for them also, and in fact, the Morrison Hotel cover.
That's right.
Is one of Henry's shots, and that's a really neat story about how that photo session happened. There was the front cover, and then.
And we went to get a drink and discovered the Hard Rock Cafe.
And that's the original Hard Rock Cafe.
Well, it had been there since the 30s. It was on Skid Row in downtown LA.
It's like a dive bar, old bum bar.
Yeah, winos, yeah. And Jim, after we did this, the front, Jim said, let's go get a drink.
Right.
So we drove around looking for a bar. Every other place was a bar or a pawn shop. We didn't know where to stop until we saw Hard Rock Cafe. And and there we are right inside the door of the Hard Rock. And Jim loved to talk to all these guys, these old winos. Look, they're all lining up the bar because they had great stories to tell. And he was a poet, and he wanted to hear these great stories about life. And he would nod and smile, and these guys would talk. Right after this album came out, they got a call from England. And a voice on the phone said, turn it over this way. The voice on the phone said,
oh, yes.
Would you mind if we use that name? We're starting a cafe here in London. We'd like to call it the Hard Rock Cafe. And they said, oh, sure, yeah, go right ahead. And so that was the start of the Hard Rock Cafe empire.
This was actually pretty funny because the story was you had asked permission at the Morrison Hotel to shoot this.
The guy at the desk, no one was in the lobby. It was a funky lobby. The guy behind the desk, and I said, we're just going to be over there shooting a few pictures. He said, oh, no, you can't. You got to talk to the owner. He wasn't there. We went outside, and I thought, well, maybe they'll stand out in front of the window because they can't stop us. It's a sidewalk. And I looked, and I saw the guy leave the desk, and he went in the elevator. That's the elevator light right there. I said, he left the lobby. Quick, run in there, you guys. And they ran in. They hit those marks, Nobody said, okay, you guys trade places. Jim, get in the middle. Bang, click, click, click. Right. One roll of film, 5 minutes, and we were out of there before the guy ever came downstairs again.
That's an amazing story, and it's such an iconic image. It's so associated with the Doors, with L.A., with downtown L.A., with rock history, classic rock, and with you. It's quite something.
The whole image is even better when you see there's lamps on each end, and you see a little bit of the building, and
Yeah. Well, and then James Taylor, Jackson Brown.
Did Jackson Brown's album
You
cover?
did Richard Pryor. You did Blondie. You worked with Bruce Springsteen, Bob Seger.
Worked with all those guys. Didn't do all their covers, but did the Eagles covers, America, Jimmy Webb, Steppenwolf, Turtles, lots
Now,
of.
the Eagles' Desperado session, where they all got duded up in Western gear and did kind of a little, Western movie, basically.
Absolutely.
What was the story behind that? Whose idea was that?
Well, they ended up with this concept album of this, Western thing. Because their concept was, look, we're these 20-year-old guys. If this was 100 years ago, we'd probably be gunslingers instead of guitar players,
Right.
So they wrote all the music, and we decided to try to make that happen in this little funky rundown movie Western lot. So we went out there and they got real movie clothes, that John Wayne wore, whoever, and real guns with blank ammunition. Went out there and basically just played cowboys. And the roadies were the posse, and the Eagles were robbing the bank and backing out of the bank with their guns blazing. and Jackson was there, and he was grabbing his chest and falling in the dirt like he was dead, It was like 10-year-old kids playing cowboys,
I'm desperately looking for that right now, but I'm not
It's
finding
near the
it.
bottom. It's in there, yeah.
Okay.
What happened was all this gun smoke and the extra smoke in these movie loads made a cloud. Here it is. Made a cloud of
There we go.
a cloud of smoke rose slowly above the Agura Hills where we were, and sure enough, not before long, we heard fire engines. And the fire engines came out there. Somebody reported the hills were on fire. Then afterwards, we had J.D. Souther, who's laying here, had a book of real Western outlaw heroes. There was this picture of the actual posse and the Dalton brothers laying dead in the street. And they always like to pose, with the dead outlaws, like they were coyotes or something. And then here's our friend Boyd Elder, there rolling a homemade cigarette. There's Gary Burden, my partner and graphic artist. Glyn Johns, the English record producer. John Hartman, the manager, and then the other three guys were roadies.
Now, Boyd did the skull art that was on the One of These Nights cover and Their Greatest Hits, and you work with Burden on a lot of these.
Yeah, we were a team of doing album covers.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Gary when we come back from this break, okay?
Love to.
We're with Henry Diltz on House Blend, and we'll be right back after this short break. We're back on House Blend on SCVTV with our guest, rock photographer Henry Diltz. Now, Henry, you were about to tell us a little bit about Gary Burden, who is art director on a lot of the projects that you worked on.
Yeah, I actually met Gary at a Love-In in L.A. in, I think, probably '68. And he was an architect working for Mama Cass, redesigning her house. And she said, why don't you do my album cover? He said, well, I'm an architect. She said, it's the same thing. It's pictures. So he said, okay. And then he met me and said, hey, you want to take photos? And then I'll do the art directing. And we just became a team. It just worked out that way. And we did, I don't know, 80, 100 albums, I guess, in a 4 or 5 year period.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That's really incredible. And we mentioned a bunch of the artists that you work with, but you also work with Paul McCartney.
Yes,
And,
I did.
that was down in the Caribbean, right? Or
Right,
Virgin Islands,
I got to spend a week on these boats. They had 3 boats moored on, anchored on Watermelon Bay while they recorded London Town.
Right.
And there's a poster inside there. I got a phone call and it said, you know, the McCartneys want you to come down here and, you know, spend a week photographing. I said, I'm there, you know. So here they are in London. Here they are in the back. And these were my pictures of them in their Hawaiian shirts and stuff. But inside, and there probably isn't one in here. There was a big poster. It's not here. There was a big poster that had all my pictures of, you know.
From the boat.
From the boat. It was great. And they recorded every afternoon. Then we'd have a big dinner, and everybody would drink beer and throw each other off the boat. And Paul would play the pump organ, and God, it was great.
Now, speaking of Paul McCartney, I was at Capitol Records in the late 70s in the press department when you and I met.
Exactly.
In fact, as I recall, you were coming in to promote your book, California Rock, California Sound, which was a collection of your photos up until that point. And I was a huge fan of yours. I'd read all of the album covers, and it was like amazing that this guy walks into my office. And so, long story short, we became friends. Did some work for us at the Capitol. I introduced you to a guy down the hall named Peter Blatchley,
right?
Who was the merchandising and advertising guy at that time. And I also met my wife at Capitol Records in '78. Right. And then in '81, I asked you to shoot my wedding. Which
I remember.
I'm still shocked to this day that you would shoot a wedding.
Oh,
but my God, thank you, thank you again.
I love weddings, champagne, you know.
Oh yeah,
pretty girls.
There were plenty of them there.
That's right.
But Nadine and I just wanted to thank you again.
Oh, sure. But you know, when you introduced me to Peter Blatchley down the hall, that set some wheels in motion, because now, 20, 30 years later,
right.
Peter and I are partners in the Morrison Hotel Gallery.
Right.
Which, you know, we started out just trying to sort of sell my pictures. We didn't even have a name for a gallery. We traveled around the country to different places and ended up in New York, and we rented a little place in Soho. So one day, Peter and I are standing across the street looking at our little place, and we had Morrison Hotel in the window. And then our window went up with nothing on it. We didn't have a name. I said, well, Peter, what if we just put Morrison Hotel on our window? You know, it would look great. It would attract attention. I wasn't thinking, well, let's cop that name, you know, and we'll call ourselves that. But let's put it on there. And gradually, it became known as that, of course. And so inadvertently, now we're called Morrison Hotel Gallery. And it started out with only my photos for 2-3 years. Now we have 60 photographers. All the top music photographers were representing there.
Well, yeah, you guys have like shows all the time, huge photographers. Right. Danny Clinch has a show just recently.
Last night, we had a Bruce Springsteen show with them.
Yeah, and then in September 2010, you had Julian Lennon.
That's right, a month
displaying
ago.
his
first photo exhibition.
Yeah.
A beautiful photo. It was packed, and Yoko came, and Sean came, and his mom, Cynthia, was there. And it was the first time all 4 of them, the 2 wives and the 2 sons of John Lennon, were ever in the same room.
That's pretty incredible.
And there was a little animosity in previous years, but they made up this night, and they all hugged each other and had a great time. It was great.
CBS was there. They caught the whole thing on film. We saw it on the CBS Sunday Morning News. It was a love fest. It was like unbelievable.
It really
These are
was.
people that you never thought they would ever be in the same room together, and here they are.
Well, you know, we have good vibes there, you know, because we're not entrepreneurs, you know, I'm a photographer, we're music people, you know, we're all kindred spirits, you know, our fellow photographers and the customers. It is a love fest.
So tell the folks how to find the Morrison Hotel galleries.
Well, we have 2 in New York, one in Soho on Prince Street, 124 Prince Street, and one where the old CBGB's was on the Bowery.
Right.
We closed the one down on Sunset, just not enough foot traffic. But we're looking to expand. And then we have a lovely website called MorrisonHotelGallery.com. And we've got all the photographers and photos up there. And big plans.
Well, Henry,